Okay, if you have Bibles, you can turn to Ephesians chapter 4. This is my third week in a row speaking, which is a little bit of a scheduling glitch, but that's how it worked out. But if it's any consolation, School of Worship, they hear from me, up to 4 times every week. So not too bad for you guys. But speaking of the School of Worship, the benefit concert is coming up. I know Ian just plugged it. We are really excited about it. We hope that everyone comes, but we also understand that it's not for everyone, okay? So it might not be for you. Feel no pressure to come. But I do want to suggest some things to you that might convince you that this night is for you. You guys ready? So Hannah Cooper, she's been on a worship team. That's a great addition, isn't it? And if you've thought, man, it's so great, Hannah on the worship team, I love her heart, but I wonder, will her heart go on? I would just love to hear Hannah Cooper singing about her heart going on. If you've ever wondered that question, then this might be for you. Michaela Rodriguez, we love her leading worship. If you've ever thought, she's a great worship leader, but is she the greatest showman? If you've ever thought that question, if you need an answer to that, come on. I thought about this for a while. Then the benefit concert might be for you. If you've looked at me when I'm preaching, you think, this guy's okay at preaching, but who does he remind me of? And then all of a sudden you've realized, it's Ryan Gosling. And if you thought, okay, he looks like Ryan Gosling, but can he play the piano like Ryan Gosling? I need to know it. I need to witness it in person. Then benefit concert might be for you. And final one here. If you've seen Sujith, what a blessing to have Sujith, isn't it? His worship leading, if you love his intensity, the intensity is in his eye. If you've just looked at that and thought, it's like looking into the eye of the tiger, then the benefit concert might be for you. So we want to encourage everyone to come. It's going to be a great night. We've had one rehearsal so far. We have lots, obviously, in the next couple of weeks, but first rehearsal was great. We felt like this went better than it might have done. We're making some good music here, so looking forward to seeing you guys there. Okay, let's talk about Ephesians chapter 4, verses 11 through 16. It says this, "And Jesus gave the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, the shepherds and teachers to equip the saints for the work of ministry, for building up the body of Christ, until we all attain the unity of the faith and of the knowledge of the Son of God, to mature manhood, to the measure of the stature of the fullness of Christ, so that we may no longer be children, tossed to and fro by the waves and carried about by every wind of doctrine, by human cunning, by craftiness in deceitful schemes. Rather, speaking the truth in love, we are to grow up in every way into him who is the head, into Christ, from whom the whole body, joined and held together by every joint with which it is equipped, when each part is working properly, makes the body grow so that it builds itself up in love." Okay, so we've been in a series, haven't we, here? What's our series all about? Maturity. And I've gotten a little confused whether we're calling the series Onto Maturity or Everyone Mature in Christ, but either way it works. It's about maturity. And so far, after kind of introing the general topic, we spent a number of weeks, haven't we, talking about personal devotion, talking about each of us individually and our relationship with God. And we kind of started there because of the conviction that we have, that I know we all share together, that we can meet with God, that each person individually can meet with God. You can find God by yourself. It doesn't need to be mediated through anyone else. You can find God, and God himself can mature you. And so we started there, but we're going to take a little bit of a different turn here now for the next few weeks and really focus on how we grow together. And this is essential for the balance of the series. It will be wrong for us to focus totally or exclusively on what we all do by ourselves, because that is not actually how the Bible says that we grow. That in lots of different ways, in lots of different places, the Bible emphasizes the fact that this is a community enterprise, that this is something that we do together, this is something that we work on together. And that emphasis really comes out in this passage, doesn't it? That it starts, it's talking about us growing up, but it starts by saying part of the way that Jesus does this is by giving gifts to the body. So how do you mature? by God gifting someone else and raising them up. It actually has nothing to do with you in that sense. It's God doing his work in the church and bringing the right pieces together so that we can all grow up. And it is interesting. It says he gives these things, and it doesn't say so that each individual can be mature, so that every single one of you can be mature. What it says is it does this for the building up of the body. That right from the get-go, if we are thinking in terms of maturity, we're not thinking, again, in terms of each one of us by ourselves on an island. We're thinking this is something that as a congregation we're doing together, that as a body we need to grow up. That he says one of the key ways that we do this is by speaking the truth in love. Again, the emphasis here isn't that we would go away individually and figure this out and grow, but that we'd be together, that we'd be speaking to one another in these certain ways. And as we do that, that we grow up. And finally, here at the end, he kind of, he makes this point really explicitly. He says, the whole body joined and held together by every joint with which it is equipped. So this only happens if we're joined together, if we're held together, if there's connections going on between us. When each part is working properly, again, makes the body grow, so that it builds itself up in love. And so when we're talking about maturity, this is inescapably a communal exercise. This is not something that we're supposed to do by ourselves. It's not something that we actually can do fully by ourselves. It's something that we have to take part in together. And this is true of the process of maturity and also the result of maturity. So again, we grow up together. The process is that we do it together. And we need to understand that we need to be together to do it. But even that's not enough. That it's not that we do it together, again, so that each individual is mature, but we do it together so that we are mature as a body. I think this is a totally different mindset for many of us. It certainly is for me. As soon as we start talking about maturity, I think, well, how mature am I? How am I doing with this? How's Bree doing with it? Don't know, don't care. How am I doing with maturity? This is how we tend to think, right? Has anyone else thought that way? I wonder, however much you've thought about maturity since we've kicked off this series, I wonder what percentage of your thoughts have been towards you and your personal maturity, and what percentage of your thoughts have been towards the body and how much we're growing together as a body. And this isn't this is just to say, hey, this is an emphasis of the Bible that we need to take on. A great place to see this is 1 Corinthians chapter 5. It says, it is actually reported that there is sexual immorality among you, and of a kind that is not even tolerated among pagans, for a man has his father's wife. So let's talk a little bit about incest this morning. It says, and you are arrogant. Ought you not rather to mourn? Let him who has done this be removed from among you. Now, when we read a passage like this, I think for most of us, our immediate thought is, okay, tune out. This has no relevance for me. Never committed incest. Don't plan to. This chapter has nothing to say to me. But what we need to notice here is that when this thing is going on in the church, Paul doesn't even address the guilty person. That his emphasis isn't towards that individual. His emphasis is to the church. That what he says is, this thing is going wrong in this individual's life. You're all responsible for it. This is something that you should have all taken on together and done something about. I'm like, wait, that has nothing to do with me. Paul says, no, it's got everything to do with you. You're part of this body. My next thought would be, well, man, if it's something like that, the elders are better deal with him. But that isn't what Paul says. He doesn't say, listen, elders, you need to get together and figure this out. He talks to every single member of the church and says that there needs to be a church response to this. In other words, when we are thinking about maturity, when we're thinking about growing up in Christ, we have to take this turn to think beyond just ourselves. Certainly we should think about ourselves. And certainly the main way that we contribute towards the maturity of the body is taking care of ourselves, making sure, am I maturing? But our thoughts have to be further than that we have to start thinking about the body. And so if we're going to mature together, we have to do it in the context of church life together, and we have to do church life together well. And so for the next number of weeks, we'll really talk about things to do with church life. And for this week, really what I want to do is just acknowledge that church life is amazing and miraculous. It's a wonderful thing to be joined together in church. Once you were not a people, you weren't even a people. Now you're the people of God. This is an amazing thing. But it is also at times frustrating and painful. So when we're in community together, again, there's going to be wonderful blessings from that, but there are also inevitably going to be frustrations. There's going to be failures that we encounter in ourselves and in one another. And the Bible speaks amazingly of the church, but it's also amazingly honest about the church. I always find it astounding that right as the church is about to be launched and Jesus has chosen 12 leaders, that one of them becomes Judas Iscariot. It's incredible. But the other 11, they're all deserting Jesus too. Every single one of these core leadership group is failing in this moment. And Jesus doesn't say, you know what, wait a second, let's put this on hold, I'll do another 3 years. No, he's like, we're going to launch this thing. Let's get this thing going. Okay, yes, there's failure within it. Yes, there's disappointment. Yes, there's these things. But it's still the church. But it's still my plan how I'm going to accomplish these things. You know, I remember growing up, my dad saying 2 things about church. I'm sure he said more than that, but I remember 2 things. And one of them was a joke that is actually pretty funny. So do you mind if I tell you guys the joke? And then I'll tell you the second thing. But so it's Sunday morning, and a son is talking to his mom. He says, Mom, I don't want to go to church this morning. Don't want to go. And the mom says, Jimmy, you got to go to church. It's Sunday morning. The son says, no, I don't want to go. I'm not going. Mom says, why do you want to go to church, Jimmy? Jimmy said, I don't like it. Don't like anyone there. Don't think anyone likes me. Don't want to go to church. Mom says, Jimmy, listen, it's Sunday morning. You got to go to church. It's important. Jimmy says, no, I'm not going. I'm not going to church. Mom says, listen, Jimmy, you're the pastor. You're preaching this morning. You got to go to church. I think that's funny. But the second thing that I remember my dad saying to me about church is, if you stay in church long enough, everyone will have the opportunity to be offended. And I was 11 at the time. I was like, why? Why would anyone be offended? But I remember him saying that to me. If you stay long enough, you will have the opportunity to be offended. He didn't tell me what to do about that, or at least I don't remember him doing. I just, little piece of wisdom from my dad. But honestly, for myself, I remember getting set into eldership, and I remember this moment. It was just a few days after getting set in, this kind of crushing weight of my own failure hitting me. I had this sense getting set in of like, okay, I'm going to be an elder. I don't just want to be an elder. I want to be an amazing elder. I want to be fantastic. And I just remember just a few days in, this realization hitting me of, I will fail. I'll fail really badly. Part of the way that I'll bless the people in the congregation is by giving them an opportunity to forgive me, to work through something that I do wrong. And yeah, there you go. Little insight into how negative my mind is, huh? But this is the way the church is, that if we're going to do church well, we have to catch a vision for it. We have to love it. We have to see how amazing it is. And we have to see how amazing the big C church is. One thing for me, when I grew up, I suffered from a lot of misinformation about the church, lack of teaching about the church. That when I grew up, I actually loved my congregation that I was a part of, but I was a little bit embarrassed about the church. And the reason for that is, if I ever heard anything about the church, it was typically the Crusades and the Spanish Inquisition, which are not great moments in church, but they're 2 small moments in the middle of a fantastic history. That when Jesus said, I want my church to grow and I want it to change and bless the whole world, that has actually happened. That one of the things that we should do is learn more about the church, because the more you learn about it, the more you realize how amazing this thing is that God's been doing. And so we need to be proud of the church, and we need to be proud of our congregation. That it's an amazing thing that God has joined us together and that we're growing together and all of these things. But we need to understand, and we need to get our heads around the fact too that the church is full of people, and there are these moments that are hard, are disappointing, and we need to learn how to walk through those. And so that's what we'll talk just a little bit about this morning. I want read Colossians chapter 3, verses 12 through 14, just to frame this a little bit. So Colossians 3, it says, "Put on then as God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, compassionate hearts, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience." It's enough really, isn't it? That's good. But he goes on, "Bearing with one another, and if one has a complaint against another, forgiving each other. As the Lord has forgiven you, so you also must forgive. And above all these, put on love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony." And yeah, so again, just want to talk a little bit about the different aspects of church life, or you could think about them in terms of stages of church life, things that we go through as we go through church life together. And again, hopefully some thoughts on that. Again, we'll be in this topic for a number of weeks, so pressure's off me. I'll try and share some things, but we'll see how we do. But when we first come into church, or if you like, the first stage of church is characterized by vision. That you come into church and you catch a vision for the church, and it's a true vision, that you see something of how amazing what God's doing with church is. You see the vision and you commit into it. That's why we call it vision and commitment. You get gripped for the church. There's the sense of, wow, being part of this body is worth a life commitment, that I'm in this thing. And at this point, you're probably seeing church the clearest that you see it, and everything seems amazing because it truly is. You have leaders who are pouring into your lives. You have worship times where we're experiencing the presence of God, teachings on a Sunday morning, home group, all of these kinds of things. It's amazing. They seem amazing because they are. Church is an absolute miracle. And this happened for me. I grew up in a church, and it was a good church, absolutely blessed by it. But really for me, it was coming onto the school of worship and really learning about church, which I hadn't done before. This was the point where God gripped my heart for church. This was the point where I started to care not only about myself, but about this body that I was a part of. And that's one of the things that happens in this season, in this phase, is that you become gripped by something beyond yourself, that you really, truly care about the church. Another thing that happens in this season is that there are lots of people who are way ahead of you in terms of their maturity, in terms of their walk with God, and so you have examples everywhere to learn from and follow, and you're propelled forward by that. And in this time, it's really a time to make radical decisions and set things right. This is a time where you say, okay, I'm not going to live my old life anymore, but I'm changing, I'm dealing with things, lordship issues, all of these kinds of things. Okay, and then at a certain point, then another aspect or second stage dawns on you. It can come on suddenly, but typically it approaches slowly. And again, it's this truth that you knew all along, but it comes home in a different way, which is that the church is full of human beings, that everyone is failing in different ways, that there's difficulties in terms of working together, that there's flaws. Again, maybe it's maybe you have friends who let you down in some kind of way, maybe leaders let you down. All of a sudden, things can feel different. These worship times, it's like you were impacted by the presence of God every Sunday. Now it can feel like, well, where is God? I can't find him anymore. Can't seem to find him. It used to be that the teachings would have felt like they would equip you every week for the week ahead. Now it feels like there's just nothing in them. All of a sudden, home group goes from loving it to kind of dreading it. These kinds of things can happen. At least to one extent or another, that to one degree or another, there is difficulty associated with church life. Can anyone relate to this, or is this just me? There are difficulties, and especially if you're committed in. If you're a visitor, there's no difficulties. But once you're committed, there's always going to be some level of difficulty to work through. And so this happens to varying degrees, to varying extents. It's not normally just one phase or the other. There's normally a mix of all of these things together. But for me, this kind of second phase, if you like, really hit me after my mom passed away. And when I entered into a season of grief. And what happened was that I just felt kind of a sense of losing vision for the church, if you could put it that way, losing vision for the school of worship. Started thinking thoughts like, are we just doing more harm than good here? I'm just not even sure. And I knew it wasn't true. It's not like, it wasn't a crisis of faith or anything like that, but it was just this sense of, I can't find the vision, can't find it. I remember at a certain point I was praying to God one summer, thinking about launching into the next year of the School of Worship. And I was praying to him, and I was just saying to God, I've got no vision for it, no excitement to go back into it. And I always have had. It's always been the case that by the time the summer rolls around, I'm excited to go again. But this summer I've got nothing. And I remember praying to God and just saying, God, is it okay that I launch into another year with no vision? The only way I'd be able to do it is just on the basis of faithfulness. That's all I got this time around. And as that came out of my mouth, just this, all I've got is faithfulness. It was this moment with the Lord, kind of moment of clarity of like, right, that is what God's after. That's what God's been after in my heart this whole time. That what I realized is that I wasn't particularly faithful because I didn't need to be. I didn't need faithfulness because I had vision every year. Does this make sense? But God brought me to this place where all I've got is faithfulness. I can just stay in because I can just stay in. I can just keep going with what I've been doing. And what I realized was that was exactly what God was wanting to do inside of me. And so if we find ourselves in this phase or this stage or dealing with this aspect of things, what do we do about it? I want to suggest that Colossians 3 is a great place to land in terms of our approach to things. We'll look back at that, but before really talking about what to do, I just want to talk about what not to do in this moment. And I want to suggest that it is a mistake to try to chase after vision or excitement or try to manufacture this sense of vision. We can do this by just looking for something new. I was looking at a new podcast, a new book. Ian, do you think it's time for a home group shuffle? Just something new. I need something. Maybe I'll just reach out to some prophets among us and see if anyone has a word for me. And if we're honest, it's not so much because we long to hear from God. It's just because we're longing for something new. I just need something new, some kind of excitement here. It's kind of the perpetual just around the corner. There's something good and it's just around the corner. I know this season's been hard, but a new season is just around the corner. And I wonder if God's like, no, it's actually not. I want you in this season for another couple of years. I'm doing something good right here. I wonder. Worst thing that we can do in this season is to become disengaged with church and allow our need for a sense of excitement to push us somewhere else. There's plenty of exciting things outside of church life. In fact, there's many, many things more exciting than being joined to the church if we need an immediate sense of excitement. One of the most obvious ones, just to mention, is pornography. That's what it does, is it just promises perpetual newness and excitement. This is the kind of things that it does. And I wonder if, again, some of the reasons that we go back to these things is because we just haven't settled this in my heart, that it's okay to walk through a season that isn't the most exciting. It's okay to just walk. It's okay to be faithful. And so within all of this, the fundamental truth that we need to get our hearts around is the fact that church is family. And family is amazing. If you're part of a family, if you're joined to a family, if you grew up in even a somewhat healthy family, then you know what an amazing blessing family is. But family is not exciting. Kind of by definition, family is not exciting. If I said to my kids, listen, for the rest of your childhood, I'm going to send you to a new family every day. Every day it's going to be a new family. And I picked the 2,000 best families in America. So every single day is going to be an amazing experience for you. You're going to love family. How many of you know that would not be a blessing for my kids? That would be a monstrosity, actually. That would be the worst thing that I can do for them because they don't need new excitement every day. They need a family. They need the same mom and dad every day. We had a moment a couple of years ago. Kim and I, we were driving around looking at Christmas lights with the kids, and we drove past a house with amazing lights and a for sale sign out in the front. We're like, guys, this house looks amazing. Should we pull it up on Zillow? It's like $3 million or something. And so we're showing the pictures to the kids, like, wow, kids, we can have a pool in the backyard and a tennis court, all these things, got a fireplace, bedroom each. Doesn't this sound amazing? And the kids were like, no, I'm not sure. No, we like our house. And so anyway, Kim and I, we knew we were joking. We thought our kids would know too, because obviously it's absurd, but they didn't because they were just young kids. So we're like, no, let's buy it. Look, $3 million, we can save. This is good. Let's buy it right now. A couple of the younger kids started crying. We were like, no, we're totally kidding. We're just joking. It's okay. But it just brings home this fact that the blessing of family is the sameness of it. That what we need most, and I think God knows what we need most, is not something new and exciting right now. What we need is the same people, the same home group, the same difficult dynamics that we just figure our way through. And that is family. And when we're committed to family, God does something in that context that he really doesn't do in other ways. And so again, sometimes we're trying to avoid something that God is bringing us into. And some of the things that he might be doing, again, for me, it was faithfulness. It was just this issue of faithfulness. Will you be faithful? Will you be faithful in a hard season? I think that many, many times in these kinds of seasons, these kinds of aspects, the thing that God's bringing up is love. Yeah. That when everything is good, we can feel like we love the church. But sometimes, if we're honest, what we love is the idea of church. Right. Church would be great if it wasn't for all of these people. School of worship goes amazing in the summer. How's school of worship going? I love it. I don't know what it is about this time right now, but it's just the best. I'm kidding. But this is often the challenge for God, is you've loved the idea of church, you've caught a vision for church, but will you actually love the flesh and blood people who you're with right now? Will you love the family that I've joined you to? And so we have an opportunity in these seasons to love. And so in that context, let me just read Colossians 3 again. It says, put on then as God's chosen ones, holy and beloved, compassionate hearts, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience, bearing with one another. And if one has a complaint against another, forgiving each other. As the Lord has forgiven you, so you also must forgive. And above all these, put on love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony. You know, when you read the Bible, it becomes clear that God cares more about love than anything else. If we can figure out what he means by love and then actually put it into practice, then I believe that we are pleasing the heart of God in a unique way. And so 1 Corinthians 13, that we're all familiar with, but I just love us to hear it afresh. God's priority on love. It says, if I speak in the tongues of men and of angels, but have not love, I'm just a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I have prophetic powers and understand all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith so as to remove mountains, but I have not love, I am nothing. If I give away all I have, and if I deliver up my body to be burned, but have not love, I gain nothing. So love's pretty important to God, which begs the question, what is love? I want to make sure that well, Paul helps us there too. He says love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres. Love never fails. So we got our work cut out for us. Jesus also says, I'll demonstrate love to you by hanging on a cross. So there's a little model for us to follow. And so, again, to whatever extent we're in this kind of a season or wrestling through these kinds of dynamics, I just want to encourage us as a church to put on love. Paul says, put it on. I love that analogy. What does that mean? I think it's the analogy of putting on clothes. So a couple of things about it. It's something that you can do. When you leave the house, when you're heading to home group, ball is in your court. Are you putting on love or are you taking it off? That God equips us, God helps us, all of these things, but the analogy makes no sense if it's not something that we have the ability to do. And so there's an encouragement to put on love. Putting on clothes is something that we do every day. I think that's helpful too. This is a daily activity. I want to be faithful every day. I want to put on love towards my brothers. And the third thing about it, and maybe this is a stretch from the biblical analogy, I don't know, but I like it, is you don't go out in public without clothes. So I think this is helpful too, that, okay, when I'm by myself, don't need to worry about this, but once I'm in public, I am putting on clothes. That in the same way, I want to put on love. So when I'm coming to a Sunday morning meeting, when I'm going to home group, when I'm meeting with a friend, whatever it is, have I put this thing on? Am I doing this? Am I engaging in these kinds of ways? The other instruction from Colossians 3, it tells us to, above everything, put on love, but it also tells us to bear with one another. Again, I love the honesty of that verse. What does it look like to be in church together? It means that sometimes people annoy you. Sometimes you're ready to be done and move on to something else. And Paul just says, no, bear with one another. And I truly believe that if we take these things on, if we join ourselves into the body and take this approach of I'm going to bear with my brothers and sisters, I'm going to love them, I'm going to put on love, I believe that God produces a maturity in us through that. That is exactly what he's after. Jesus says the whole world will know you by the love that you have for one another. I think so often we can have different priorities. We can be distracted or focused on other things. And I just believe that God's question to us, we'll stand before God at the end of our lives. I think one of the first questions that he'll ask us is, how was your love? Did you love? Look at all this service that I did. I was prophesying every week. But did you love? I think that's so central to the heart of God. Okay, so just to end here, want to talk a little bit about where we land if we move through these things. And the easiest way to do this is just by giving the example of home group. And so when you're in home group, when you start a new home group, the first phase is always this excitement, whether it lasts for a week or a month or a year, that you come in and it's exciting to be in a new group. And that excitement, it might even be negative excitement. There might be anxiety with it or nervousness, those kind of things. But one way or another, there's an excitement about the new group, and that's a great thing. But then at a certain point, always, no matter how good your home group is, boredom kicks in. It's the same people every week. You do roughly the same things. And even if it's wonderful, and it is, home group is great. Hopefully you guys aren't hearing me wrong. I love home group. I love church, all of these things. But at a certain point, the excitement wears off. You guys hearing me? Honeymoon's over. Honeymoon was great. honeymoon's over. Okay, and then at that point, again, there's this challenge of faithfulness, of bearing with. This person's sharing, they're sharing the same thing they always share. I'm loving them, I'm bearing with them, I'm staying in, okay? So we walk through that phase, if you like, and where do we come out on at the other end is family. That you move through the first phase, get to the second phase, you move through that, and eventually home group becomes this sense of, what are you doing on Tuesday night? I'm hanging out with my family. I can't think of anything better to do than just be with family. And so that's where we're going, and God knows how much we need family. The last thing that I'll say here, many, many years ago, we were in a home group with a gentleman who was going through various different things in his life, and he stopped attending home group for a season, and we asked him why he stopped coming, and he said, John, it's like I have an open wound on my leg, and home group feels like a tiny Band-Aid to put over it. It just doesn't meet the need. And I understood exactly what he was saying, because he was going through really tough things. There was no way that it was going to be appropriate to discuss those things or work through those things fully in home group. But what I think he missed, and what I didn't know at the time, but I learned later on, is that just being with family was actually the exact thing that he needed. That there's something that God knows about the power of family, about the power of just being together, and what God's able to work in us and accomplish through that. I think God's much more convinced about the power of that than we are. So we go to home group, first of all, because we're excited about it. Secondly, because we're just committed to it. But then finally, because it's our family. We love to be together with family. And so would you stand with me? God, we just want to say that we love and we're so thankful that you have joined us into a family. God, it is one of the most amazing blessings that you've given us. We were alone and lost, but you joined us in and you included us in. And we thank you so much for that. And God, my prayer, our prayer together this morning, is that you would teach us to love. God, I pray that whatever else we're known for, I pray that we would be known for love, God. God, I pray that the love that we have would be like a living light. God, that spreads out and impacts and changes this community. So help us, God. Help us to love. We just say right now, even this morning, we're choosing to put on love. God, we're choosing to put on gentleness, faithfulness, meekness, humility. And God, we ask that you would help us to walk in these things, help us to love our brothers and sisters, and that, God, you would bring us together as a community in love to grow up into you and to serve you and to be your body in the earth. We ask these things in your name, Jesus Christ. Amen.